This is Corning Q2 2022 earnings call summary. Really great quarter. They did get this information real quick because I think they beat on profit, but they missed on revenue. Yeah, they beat on profit, missed on revenue. However, the stock price has performed fairly well since they released these earnings reports. First things first, they talked about their foreign currency hedging. Right now, the US dollar is really strong, almost on par with the euro for the first time, I think, ever. And so what that means is for a company like Corning is that they're using US dollars to purchase foreign currency that they're then using to pay their employees and to pay for materials that they're manufacturing outside of the US. Okay. The majority of their customers, I think, are in the US. I'm not sure. But I know a large portion of their money comes from US customers, which means they're making US dollars, but spending foreign currency. So that bodes really well for them. As you can see here in this statement, that they have a gain of 200 million, but it's important to note here that this is only mark-to-market adjustments, meaning that they don't really recognize, or I'm sorry, they don't really pocket the 200 million until they exit these currency hedging contracts. So while it is good that on the books they've made 200 million, they haven't actually put that 200 million in their pocket until they close these particular hedging positions. When that happens, who knows? What happens if the dollar, for some reason drops in the near future? I doubt that'll happen. Right now, we know that the U.S. government is raising interest rates, and when they raise interest rates, that creates a stronger dollar. And so I can imagine that these hedging strategies that they put in place is probably going to continue to increase until they decide it's time to close them, at which point, hopefully, they'll see a really nice gain from that. All right. They talked about solar in the last earnings call, and they said that they were selling as much as they were able to make. And during the earnings call, the CEO definitely backed off from that, saying that while they are selling as much as they're making, they're not willing to make more because they're trying to manage and figure out what's going to happen on a political front in terms of solar. And that's exactly what they said, worried that, there may be some change in government policies. And so persons won't necessarily want to purchase solar. And so, again, they are still making, quite a bit of money in solar, but they are going to be cautious about the future of solar. All right, this is just straight up results. As you can see, 22% year over year growth, net profit up 23%. I mean, those are huge numbers. If net profit is up 20%, then we ought to see a rather large increase in the stock price. However, that almost never happens, right? Not 20% anyway, not that fast. The earnings per share was something like 55 cents. And so 55 cents is the minimum amount that the stock price will move. However, there's always a multiple put on that earnings per share. So we're talking about 55 cents times, who knows, 2 or 3. It depends on what the rest of the industry and sector is doing. I don't have that number in front of me, but again, we can assume that maybe there's a multiple of maybe 1.5 to 2 at least. And so that means we ought to see a stock price movement of something like $1, which I think it has done something similar to that since the release of these earnings. The biggest driver for the increased sales and profit comes from the fiber optic and communications section of the business. And I did go through the Rogers Communications earnings call, and exactly what Corning said was also mirrored by Rogers Communications, saying that, you know, they're going to continue to spend money to increase not only their broadband, but also to lay more fiber optics. And they don't see any change in that in the near future. And so that bodes really well for Corning, who is in the business of making that fiber optic and getting it out to these telecom companies and internet companies. All right, let's see. Okay, so yeah, display technologies. This has always been sort of a weird thing for me. I think not last earnings call, but probably one before that. I talked about how they were super excited about TV displays, and how I disagreed with the notion that TV displays were going to continue to increase in size. I cannot imagine why anyone is purchasing anything more than 70 inches for their home. It doesn't make any sense. I don't see television screens getting any bigger than what they already are. We also know that the consumer is beginning to falter. So the consumer cyclical sector, TVs, electronics, things of that nature are definitely dropping. And so that's what we see here with the TV glass section of the business is definitely down, and we can expect this downtrend probably for the next 6 months or so, at least, right? And so that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. All right, see, this is specialty materials. Oh, this is telephones. So same thing. Let me make sure. Yeah. So phones again are starting to come down. Another consumer electronic. But what Corning has been really good at in doing is putting more of Corning products into the phones. And so while the cell phone sales are down, meaning that the Gorilla Glass that covers those cell phones is down, they're putting more of the Corning products into the phones, such as cameras and the like. So again, while phone sales are down, they're still able to recognize a 12% increase in net income on this particular section of the business. The other thing important to mention, this did get talked about in the last earnings call, was the price increases have obviously done well for the company. And I think that is evident by the fact that they missed on revenue expectations but beat on profit expectations, meaning that their sales numbers were down, but because they were selling the same product for more money, their profit is up. So that's really good. Okay, environmental technologies. This, I believe, has to do with cars. Yeah. So again, car sales. The CEO talked about car manufacturing not happening at all in China. They also said that car sales in Europe were at their lowest point that they've been in a very long time. And so they don't expect to have any growth in that section of the business. However, they did talk about, again, wanting to put more and more of the Corning products into the cars. I think their goal is $100 per car. And I mean, that is a lofty goal, to think that $100 worth of Corning products is going to be in each and every car on the road, new anyway. So I should say $100 for every newly built car in the U.S., I believe, or maybe even across the world, because we're talking about all of the vehicle manufacturers. So again, very, very lofty goal. But again, I think that talks very well to their strategy to not only increase sales, but to put more of their products in the products that their products are already in, right? So even if the sales drop off, we can expect there to be an increase in net profit just because there's more of their products being sold at once. So anyway, so that's that. Dealing with sirens. Okay, life sciences. This is the glass vials that the drugs come in. They are an industry leader in this industry, and so nothing really going on. It was a boon when COVID came around because there was a lot of COVID vaccines and whatnot being made and put into glass vials. That has subsided. And so now this section of the business is just doing what it's doing. Still a decent business, only 300 million relative to the 15 billion in revenue that they do. So fairly small part of the business, but moving along well and at least adding something to the bottom line. All right, this is the emerging growth businesses. Again, this is something that they don't talk a lot about, but they do always say how great it is, right? And this again goes to the strategy of putting more of their products in the products that their products are already in, right? And so that's where this emerging growth businesses comes into play. And I think what's happening is as these emerging businesses become bigger and do better, then they will start to include these businesses in their breakdown of, different sections of the company. As of right now, all these businesses are just thrown into the emerging growth businesses section. As you can see, up 45% year over year, which, is not the number looks really big, but it's not that big of a number when you talk about the fact that we're talking about very small businesses just starting out. And then over the course of a year, they have growth of, sometimes 100%, 50%, just because they're very small and just getting started. Sales of 400 million. Again, this is spread across who knows how many different businesses in this section, but definitely a decent driver for the company. And I can imagine as that number creeps up to, if we're talking about 45% year over year, so we're talking about, if we're doing 50% next year, that's 600 million, 800 million. Once we get up to, a billion, 2 billion, then we can definitely see some of these companies start to get broken out into their individual lines of business. One of the important ones that I think is interesting, because this is in maybe, I think, 3 vehicles so far. One is a Jeep, is the Gorilla Glass technology for the car. And the reason why this is interesting to me, and again, this is something that they don't talk a lot about, because these auto manufacturers, they want the element of surprise when they come out with these new vehicles, right? So Corning can't say, oh, we're in this and we're in that. So, but what they're doing is they're putting display on the windshield. Okay, so that means as you're driving, you're going to have a heads-up display on your windshield, and that is something very interesting, and it sounds very fun to me. There's also the anti-glare thing going on with auto windshields, which is really nice. And so again, a decently sized area of growth for the company. Otherwise, really great quarter. Happy to be in the name. Don't see any changes right away. If we can add more shares, we will. But if right now, everything is good.